All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
There is no shortage of monsters to haunt our dreams.
You got red on you.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Alive! It's alive!
Groovy.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Oh the Horror, a podcast where we take a look at classic and modern horror films from an expert and a newcomer's perspective. I'm the expert Rob Holmes, and today Steve Allman is not with us. He is currently getting himself set up in Los Angeles. Instead, I have a new co-host today. His name is Mike Haston.
Hello, I'm Mike Haston. I guess I'm the newcomer. I'm definitely nowhere near the expert that Rob is on horror movies, but I have enjoyed them ever since I was old enough to sneak over to a friend's house and watch Friday the 13th. Because the only R-rated movie we were allowed to watch growing up in our own home was Rambo.
That's pretty great, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Rambo taught me how to read, man, but that's a story for another time.
Nice. So yeah, this film that we're going to be talking about today is called Masks. It's a giallo film, but it's German.
Yeah, it's very much German. So it's, giallo. So it's almost the same word, but it's got a fun little accent.
It's such a weird movie too. This film, when you look at it, it originally came out in 2011 at a couple of film festivals, then a few more in 2012. Then it didn't actually come out in the US until 2016. And didn't even get on Amazon Prime until, last month, I think.
I believe it said 2019 on Amazon, which prompted you to look up, the whole sordid history of when this movie was actually made.
Yeah, and this is a really strange one, too, because there's so much time that went between it. It won a bunch of awards when it came out at festivals. I remember I turned the trailer on, and I showed you the trailer for this, too, and at first the trailer looks bad. It looks this could be a really terrible movie.
Yeah, and it's funny, I think I even said it while we were watching the trailer. It starts out very low budget looking. That kind of grainy, washed out 70s filter. The woman writhing around with blood on her stomach and stuff. All these quick cuts of stuff that look like they were filmed in someone's garage. Or Das Garage, as it were.
And it just seemed... So as we're watching the trailer, though, it starts getting better. It actually starts to look like a giallo film. It looks like the decade it should take place, which, granted, it's a film that's taking place modern day, but it has history in the 1970s because that's where the backstory is in this.
Right, like the first thing you see in the movie, right, is like a ritual kind of a cult gathering in the 70s, and it has that washed out filter, and I think that was kind of a mistake in the trailer. I feel like they cut a lot of footage together from that beginning part, and it has that look, and honestly it makes you, when you watch the trailer, you're like, how much of this movie's gonna look like that? And the answer is like 2.5 minutes. It's really not. I mean, obviously it's important to the story of the film, but It's really not a big part of the movie.
No, it's definitely... It's moments of the film. Now, for the most part, this movie looks amazing. Like, once you're watching it, that scene that they show you in the beginning, I understand why it looks the way it does, but that should not be the first scene they show you in the trailer, because that's the worst quality of everything we see.
I totally agree. It's a great way to start the movie, but it's a terrible way to do the trailer.
Now, what's cool about this is this is very much like Suspiria, except it takes place in an acting school instead of a dance academy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, it's very, you already said it's a giallo, but it's very Argento-esque with the isolation, the school with a dark secret, all sorts of stuff. And I love that when and we'll talk about how she gets to the school in a second, but I love that when her boyfriend is taking her to the school, that they have to go down these winding roads that are surrounded by these huge hedges and stuff, and it's, they had started in the city or whatever, and so it really gives you the sense that, like, they're going way out to BFE, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, okay, if you have to run away from this place, you are probably going to be kind of screwed.
Oh, definitely, because, I mean, this is one of those movies that relies a lot. So cinematography is a huge factor in this, and it's really good cinematography, and a lot of symbolism that we get right off the bat as well, because this girl's an actress. She's not very good.
Oh, God, yes, I definitely want to talk about it.
Yeah, we get her. What was the thing that she was doing? Was it Antigone or
no? It's another Greek tragedy, but she's just butchering it, and I love it. Like, you were talking about the symbolism, and we were talking about it while we watched it. Like, I love that in that first scene, the stage lights, they show her from behind, and she's got this white dress on, and you can see, like, basically through it, not to the point of nudity, but you can see the outline of her legs and so on and so forth. And I think it's kind of showing how insecure she is, because later in the movie, when she's performing the same scene, they show her from the back and from the front, and the dress is not transparent whatsoever. And I feel like that kind of shows her confidence. But yeah, she's doing this scene from a Greek tragedy in German, of course, because the movie's in German. And even not being familiar with the language, you can watch her performance and be like, oh my God, that's not how you're supposed to do that. And I love at the end when there's a line about, like, her love being cleaved in twain like an oak tree or something, and she pantomimes swinging a giant axe. And everyone, all the film critics and the people she's auditioning for, are just rubbing their foreheads and looking down. But I loved it. She swung that little invisible axe into my heart.
Well, I just like the fact that they're just like, she didn't read the play.
Right. She just read the scene, not the whole play.
Yeah, and just calling her out on that. But there's this one guy who basically looks like German old man Tilda Swinton, except kind of like the one in the new Suspiria, except that guy could have actually played that character because he looked like a German male version of Tilda Swinton.
He absolutely did. And we didn't even touch on the fact that our heroine is fake German Brie Larson.
Dude, she is, and it's like, she has this classic 1970s look to her. She has this look that fits in with this movie. So I have to say, really, like, right off the bat, the casting of this is extremely on point. Everybody's look, it looks timeless. Like, everybody has this kind of timeless look where you're like, does this take place in, like, the 90s? You see cell phones and stuff, so you know it doesn't. You know it's modern day. But they all have this classic, just this older look to them, where I feel like this movie could be a 70s giallo at any time.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. If it weren't for the cell phones and so on, then I would have no idea what year this movie was set in.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of its appeal,
Oh, no, it is. And
it's
I mean,
a
that's
timeless story, kind of.
Exactly. And so we're introduced to Stella. She's our main character, our German Brie Larson. And
Larson.
After she, she talks to this guy, and he's like, I like what you did. There's this school, you should check them out and their method.
Yeah, the Gadula method.
Yeah, the Gadula. So in the 70s, Gadula, he had this acting method, and it was trying to make everybody shine, right? But it was basically, you were causing them to break down all barriers, so you're living an emotion 24/7. Right,
it was almost a constant state of emotional trauma. Yeah.
Yeah, and it would be, I mean, stuff got violent, and eventually it led to, apparently students died, and then he commits suicide. That's the whole basis behind it, and they're like, what happened? His program got shut down. They're like, this school still exists, but they don't teach his methods, and that wing of the school is no more.
Right, there's the big wrought iron door where it's always locked, and she even sees, I forget the girl that they kind of pair with her's name.
Cecile.
Cecile, yes. And she sees her go through this door, and it's immediately locked behind her, and then one of the instructors is like, don't ever go near that door, blah, blah, blah. And she asks what's behind it, and she says nothing. It's not even like, oh, it's a closed-off wing of the school. It's
Yeah.
just nothing is there, you know. They do a really good sense almost of conveying, like how you talked about the Gadula method was putting you through these emotional traumas and things. I think they do a great job of bringing the viewer of the film in on the sense of dread that Stella is feeling and confusion,
absolutely.
you know.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that you're brought in on that from the beginning, and it's kind of confusing on what's going on. I mean, she's meeting other students, they're giving her shit right off the bat. She's not taking shit from them. She'll argue back with them, especially that creepy dude right off who introduces himself to her at the school. And is like, "Oh, do I intimidate you?" And she's like, "No."
Yeah, the guy with the bad teeth. Yes.
Yeah. Ew, oof,
He looks
creepy
kind
looking.
of like the neighbor's kid, the Klopek's son, the guy from Children of the Corn or whatever, Malachi.
Courtney Gaines.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's immediately off-putting. You're like, oh God, why is he here? And then there's the Spanish-looking girl that hates her. I think Valerie.
Yeah, she does not like her at all. We're introduced to the one girl who's running out of there when she shows up and her boyfriend drops her off.
Yep,
She's
German
escaping
Allison
the
Pill.
school. Yeah, German Allison Pill. And what's interesting about that is, we're hitting almost the same beats as Suspiria. We're dealing with someone, the lighting is not as crazy, and it's happening during the day for this type of stuff, but it works. And there's a lot of symbolism that they throw back to. I mean, they literally show you flashbacks within seconds of meeting someone to say, see how they know each other. But for some reason in this film, they do it a couple of times.
Yeah, they kind of go overboard. Like, you have just seen her like a minute and a half earlier, and then when she enters the actual school, she sees German Allison Pill's picture on the wall, and they're like, you need a flashback. You probably forgot that you just saw this girl. And you're like, oh my God, like, don't.
But then at the same time, that's kind of giallo. That's one of those things that does happen in a few of these films where plot has never been the biggest thing in a giallo. As far as, well, especially when you're dealing with Argento, like he always said, plot got in the way of what he was trying to do, especially. So in this is one of those films where the plot is clear and the plot is actually fully formed. And I have to say, like, everything is explained in this movie for the most part. And it is, that's why I really enjoy it. I think it's actually one of my favorite giallos. Even before we get into some of the heavier stuff in it, I'm just going to preface that this is definitely one of my favorite giallos, even though it's a German giallo and a modern one.
Yeah,
which seems very strange.
It was really good, and I was actually going to bring that up at some point. Is the one kind of trope of the giallo that it breaks is that they actually explain pretty much everything, or at least give you enough clues for you to interpret it and explain it to yourself. And Argento, at a certain point in his films, I feel like you just said, he said plot got in the way, so he's got an idea of where it's going, but then he's like, let's just throw more bugs on Jennifer Connelly and, spin the camera around and turn on that yellow light, damn it. And, this movie, even though it has a lot of the cool lighting, and I love, there's a couple scenes where there's different colored lights on either side of Stella, and Stella is somehow still naturally lit. I think they did a hell of a job filming this thing. And I like it too, because I'm not left at the end of the movie like, what the hell did I just watch? It's like, okay, that was crazy, but I get it. I understand the point it was making and the story it was telling.
Well, it felt like a very satisfying conclusion to me. Like, everything that we saw by the end of it, I'm like, oh, wow, you guys left just enough to the imagination, but covered it really, really well. Now, what we're dealing with in this film, we have our gloved killer, our black gloved killer, who is using a fencing sword.
I was going to say, I don't know whether it's a rapier or an EP or whatever, but yes, he's a big fan of that sword.
Oh, yeah, well, and that's because, they have their fencing for some of the acting stuff that they're doing. You see him doing the lessons in the background at certain points, so you're like, all right, this was something that they did in the school, so for someone to pick a weapon it's a good murder weapon, and it's used a lot.
It's used
in this
brutally.
film.
It's used on a lot of necks. Yeah.
It's used on a lot of necks, and it's used in a way where one stab doesn't necessarily just kill the person.
Right. I think the first person we see get stabbed through the neck manages to crawl to another room before they put it through the back of her head. Yeah.
Yeah, but then here's the thing. It was such a small hole because it's like the rapier type thing. When she puts when the sword is put through this woman, the first time through the neck, like, you're expecting her to just die. In most of these films, a person would just be dead, right? Mm-hmm. Well, in giallos, there are usually prolonged death scenes that go on for a while, and this is why it worked really well. They do one through the back of the head, and you're like, well, this person has to be dead now. No.
Nope.
They crawl into frame a little bit before they finally succumb to the wounds and die. But I like that because they get stabbed in the brain, but it's like those few moments still of the synapses kicking in before, they bleed out or have brain death or anything like that. I thought that was brilliant. And it heightens
I agree, and I think
the tension.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think because it's German Allison Pill's like friend or whatever who's comforting her after she's gone home, after running away from the school. And she was the previous student of the Gdula method, because not everybody at this school is accepted into that program where they use the method. And she was, and that's why she's running away.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, because what we find out about the method and how traumatizing it is, I think the fact that she didn't just see her friend killed in front of her or anything. She heard the noise, and then her friend crawls into the doorway and then dies. I think it almost went hand in hand with the whole ratcheting up the tension and the stress and the, so on and so forth. I think it was absolutely a brilliant choice for a way to kill a character.
Well, and then her death is one of those where, right away you're expecting it to be, okay, well, they're going to come in and stab her a few times. And she's defending herself with a pair of scissors. Very, as we talked about, you were like, oh, it's very Clock Tower, except they're small scissors. Mm-hmm. But the way she's holding these things out in this defensive position. But what's strange is it almost seems like whatever the method did, this person is able to either have psychic control or activates the person.
Yeah, exactly. They do those close-ups on his eye and everything, and she slowly turns the scissors towards herself, and that's a brutal shot too.
Dude, it's a very there's something like so macabre yet beautiful about the entire thing, because she takes these scissors, stabs herself in the neck with them, right, on both sides, and you're like, oh man, that's brutal. And then she closes them all the way.
Them shut. Yeah.
And you see it cut her windpipe, and you actually see the windpipe it's just nasty, man. It's really brutal, and it's subtle details in there that you see, of like, oh, it's just so gross. It's such a nasty death.
And I think that's honestly the goriest part of the film. A couple more people get stabbed in the neck and everything, but that really sets the tone for the movie. Because you don't see anybody else's windpipe flapping in the breeze.
No, and it's I would say this is a pretty violent movie, but it's not the goriest thing ever.
Right. Yeah, absolutely not. The gore is they use it right there at the beginning, and go hard with it. But then a lot of the middle of the movie, the bulk of the movie, is not gory. It's creepy, and there's the implications that some nasty stuff is happening here and there, but you don't see it, certainly not on that level.
No.
And then it ratchets back up towards the end, and gets pretty crazy again. But still, I don't think anything on the level of German Alison Pill cutting her own windpipe.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. I mean, that was an insane moment. And then, after that, we're kind of with Stella, and Cecile is brought in kind of to the picture because she had been away doing classes, and now she's joining back up. So now Stella has a scene partner in Cecile. They do the game where they ask they make a statement it's the like kind of the statement game. You say one thing, and then the other person says like yes and they just kind of go back and forth with that. And pretty much Stella discovers Cecile has a secret. Cecile is scared of something. And you know that there's more to the Gadula method than what anybody is telling them.
Right.
And it's stuff that Cecile can't really talk about. We also see Cecile has a mark on her that looks like a small cut and then this little circle thing around her, too, where you're like, what the hell are they doing to these people?
Right, it's like the back shoulder. And didn't we see that on Gap, on German Allison Pill, when her friend was
we did
hugging
as
her?
well.
Yeah.
So this was, exactly, and this is one of those things where any of these people who have gone with the Gadula method have this on them, and they're trying to figure out, all right, you're seeing it a lot, right? So that's what makes it, that part is interesting in itself, but then we start having people coming in and snooping around and trying to figure out more of what's going on. Like, she starts digging into the method itself. There's a reporter guy who starts coming around because she's like, are you a cop? And he's like, no, I'm pretty much, I think he was like a reporter just coming in and trying to get a story.
Yes. Yeah, I believe, I think the impetus for that was the death of the girl who'd run away. And I know because the school has that history of being shut down in the 70s because of the method going too far and so on and so forth. And so I think when the girl who had attended that school, in the modern time had died so brutally and under mysterious circumstances and so on and so forth, I'm sure, some reporter trying to make his name would pick up on that and say, okay, I'm going to go to this school and see what the hell's going on.
Yeah, that didn't go so well for him.
No, it never does it?
It did not go well at all for him. Basically, he goes in there and is snooping around, trying to get a bunch of information, and they straight up even say to him, like, or he even says out loud, he's like, oh yeah, sorry, I'm leaving now. I know I shouldn't be here. No harm, right? No. He gets stabbed. Like, and his way of getting stabbed was a cool death for him, because it took the sword thing and changed it up slightly. He's about to put his cell phone up to his ear, and then the sword goes through his ear.
Yep.
And then every time we hit his kind of point of view, we get that ringing, We get that...
the tinnitus.
And you can partially hear out from the other ear that he can still hear from, but that one ear, you get the tinnitus that's just taking over most of the audio on his part.
Yeah, I
thought that was cool.
I think this movie just does a great job of making you feel what the characters themselves are feeling. Just in the statement game that you were talking about a minute ago, we learn a lot about Cecile, but we also learn a lot about Stella, because up till then, we only know that she's not a great actress, but wants to be one. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And during the statement game, they're saying, it starts off innocuously enough, but then they're saying things like, I hate myself, or I feel like I'm letting myself down, and blah, blah, blah. And your scene partner has to repeat it. And so Cecile is saying these kind of depressing ass things, and Stella is then just going along with the game and repeating it, but you can see in her face, and it's, all credit in the world to the actress, German Brie Larson, but you can see in her face that she's kind of having some personal revelations about herself, where she's, oh my God, I do kind of feel this way. And
absolutely. And then the actual use of the masks as well, when she has to put them on for the first time, and there's this blue one that she puts on, and
overcome with sadness and tears and stuff. Yeah.
And she can't find any emotion with it, though. Like, other people were able to, and she couldn't in that first one that she puts on. And then they're like, you know what, maybe this isn't the right one. They give her that yellow one that has like that aged look to it. And she puts it on. She looks at her class, and then all of a sudden she looks left, and something flashes in front of her, and she sees this figure, and she has a visceral reaction. She has a straight up, like, full-on emotional, almost like breakdown thing, where she lifts her arm in fear, and then pulls the mask away, and everyone's like, holy shit. Like,
yeah,
they didn't
like
expect
full
that to
body
come from her.
sobbing too. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was cool because then you're like, oh shit, all right, well, what's going on with this whole mask thing? Which really, they never talk about the masks afterwards, but masks is more of the metaphor for everything that they're putting up on themselves anyway.
Right.
Because that's all it is putting on a mask when you're going out there and performing, and that's... She eventually is accepted into the Gadula method. And we start to learn what that is. And she's already kind of found out what it is. She's done research and found this like little documentary film.
Yeah, she found the old video. And I don't know how she found that video and was still like, you know what? I'm staying at this school. You know what I mean? Because that video
she never
terrifying.
finished it, though, was the
that's
dumb part.
true.
She got to a certain part and her boyfriend came over, and then she never finished it. So... We also had the reporter go over and talk to someone who had been one of Gadula's students and left. And he said, yeah, it's if I didn't leave, I don't think I would have survived it. And then he even says that there's only one thing that it leads to. And we don't even find this out till later. But during the interview, he's like, death. Death is what happens to any one of his students. And that's the completion of the method.
Because, we do finish the video later in the film.
Yeah, but it takes so long. Like, she's heard all this stuff about how terrible it is and how people have gone crazy from it. And you watch the video of how people are acting while they're doing this method. I would not want to be a part of that, but she is willing to do anything for the price of fame. She's... At least it seems that way at times.
Yeah.
She wants to be famous. Even when she was just barely influenced by the method, when her boyfriend comes at one point, after she's gone through part of the method and put on one hell of a performance... that even that other girl who doesn't like her and isn't a very good actress is completely just blown away by how this girl went from being shit to awesome.
Yeah, and it's the same scene from the beginning of the movie that she does well now, and it's that was a great way of showing... I guess, like you said, I didn't consider it in the whole, like, I watched that video and I was like, okay, run, like, is what I would do.
Yeah.
But she being willing to do anything for fame and seeing how quickly her skills have grown and manifested between the intro of the movie where she's just butchering this scene with an invisible axe again, and then really knocking it out of the park. And I think the mask that she looked through, and that was such a great shot when she's looking out at the crowd through the mask. I believe that is, an ancient, like, Greek tragedy mask from Oedipus or Antigone or one of those. But it absolutely is evocative of that at the very least. And just to touch on that mask scene again real quickly, I love that when she walks onto the stage or into the classroom, in that scene, there's a guy who has just taken off the mask that they've given him to wear, and he's kind of quizzically looking at it, like after, because while he had it on, he was laughing and blah, 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 and then he takes it off and immediately stops laughing, and he looks at it like it made him do that. You know what I mean?
I noticed that, and I thought that was a great moment where it's like it's almost like they're testing all their students, and we're just watching her story.
Exactly.
Because, Cecile was part of it, too.
Everyone there is going through this preliminary kind of screening before being accepted into the method. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think part of the reason they pick her is because she started so bad. And
also she has no one else in her life. Remember, they want to make sure you don't really have anyone.
Yeah.
And that you already had a really rough beginning of your life, because she talks about how her mom used to make her dance and stuff, and at first you're like, oh, that's okay, but we find out that there's more sinister overtones to that, or undertones. Like, as we're moving through, we're like, oh shit, she blocked out a lot of stuff, and a lot of abuse. Basically, like, her mom just beat the shit out of her all the time when she was a kid. So that's the trauma she's holding, is this character, Yeah.
The only person in her life is her boyfriend, really.
Right now, yeah. And then when we're going through... so I think the reason that she chose to go with the method is, remember, she gets kicked out of school for fighting with Valerie.
Right.
Like, they get into a fight, and they're like, we're not going to have this. You're done. And they're like, well, just because you're expelled from the class doesn't mean that you can't still learn. So they backed her into a corner, really. They're pretty much like, you're not a good actress, you're done, but you can do this method. And I think that's why she chooses to do it, because she felt
even though
like
she had
it's
lost
not the
everything,
safest thing
kind
to
of.
do.
Yeah.
Right now, she's like, well, Cecile's alive and she's performing really well. Okay, well, I mean, everything seems fine with her, I guess. So why not?
I think that's part of the method itself, is to take all this away from you and then offer you a glimmer of hope. It's almost like the opposite of a sensory deprivation tank. It's like a sensory overload. And it's, as you said earlier, it's almost every emotion. It's not that they're constantly scaring you or screaming at you. It's they want you to be sad. They want you to be happy. They want you to feel acceptance. They want you to feel lost. They want you, they are literally hitting every emotion on the human spectrum and stuff.
Yeah, and that's really part of it. It's to create emotions. It's to push it to that next level. It's actually... you know what it is? It's like a voluntary version of Martyrs, It's like the movie Martyrs, but voluntary.
No, it's not, because I like this movie. No.
Yeah, well, no, well, that's true. Okay,
I'm not a fan of Martyrs.
I'm with you on that. But, I mean, it's kind of like you're being subjected to torture to get you to this different state, right? It's to get you into something else. And in Martyrs, it's to get you to that... so much pain that you hit a different dimensional plane of it. You find out the true meaning of stuff.
To describe the afterlife, kind of. Yeah, to look through the gates of heaven and stuff. Yeah.
You're on the precipice of that, between life and death, yeah. And then in a film like this, it's to hit you to that heightened state of emotion, but you're like, why? Why are they doing this? What is it that they're doing? Why do you need all of that emotion?
Right, and we find out later.
We find out. Good God, do we find out. Basically, like, at the end of the day, we find out that Gadula's alive.
And he looks like German Ed Asner, because everyone in this movie has to look like someone else.
Like somebody else. And he has survived. He didn't kill himself.
So we forgot to talk about, he had that one, prize student that we saw in the documentary.
Yeah, and she talks about how she would do anything. First, she seems normal, right? She seems... like, she's very Dr. Quinn medicine woman. She looks like Dr. Quinn.
She kind of
does. So Dr. Quinn is, she's talking about in this video how she would do anything for him. But as we see more of the video and we see more of her talking about him, she gets crazy eyes. She gets crazy eyes for, like, definitely more than a couple of moments.
Yeah, it's almost like watching some of the Manson family members talk about, Charles Manson, and they get that faraway, dead-eyed look, and they're just like, oh, he's amazing, I would do anything. And then I believe we're told that she died or disappeared as well.
Yeah, I think we're told, like, with everybody, they all died or they were all, whatever happened to them. And we're introduced to the guy who brought her there and gave her this stuff, who said she was German male Tilda Swinton, and then the woman who was like the house mother over there, basically the teacher. She's one of the instructors, the main instructor. She is in on it as well, and she's been, drugging Stella and putting all this stuff in her food to get her ready for things, and they've actually told her what they've been doing to her, too.
Yeah, and I think that's part of saying, like, oh, we've taken this control away from you. But again, Stella doesn't care as much as she should.
Yeah, well, and that's the weird part about it is, like, I think with some of what they've been doing to her, too, they get her to go along with a lot of stuff. And then basically what, by the time we end up at the end of it, she has gotten all these weird clues, basically, on how to escape, Like, everything's been super conveniently laid out. Like, she finds her cell phone, she finds, like, or she listens and hears that, like, death is what happens to the students,
Yeah, she finally finishes the documentary. Yeah.
And someone plays it to her, like she hears it through a vent.
Right.
And then
I think isn't it played on like the dead reporter's cell phone held up to the vent too? Okay.
Yeah, that's what we find out, is that it's not just from the recorder, it's being held up to the vent. So basically what we find out when she finally sees Gdula is that they planned this for her the entire time. Everything that we've seen her go through, every little bit has been orchestrated
meticulously
from the beginning. Every
yes.
time Cecile has disappeared, Cecile's locket is there at one point by this door that was previously locked and then isn't locked anymore. They even say, like, how could a door that was previously locked that you told her not to go into conveniently be unlocked right at the moment you need to go in there?
Yeah. And this is, I think that was after she kissed Cecile. Like,
yeah.
They definitely have a moment, you know. But that again is part of the method, is getting her, because again she only has the boyfriend in her life really currently, and then being at the school has separated her from him, and then they almost craft this character out of Cecile specifically to make Stella not only feel comfortable and feel like she has a friend while the other students are tormenting her and stuff. They want to replace the love in her life and make her fall in love with Cecile.
Absolutely. And that leads to all of the emotions of the love, the anger and the hate and resentment to her boyfriend, and to, you know, like Valerie and a couple other people, and then dealing with her own emotions of her mom. Because basically what happens is they pit Stella and Cecile against each other by making them have delusions that one is, like Cecile is fighting back against her abusive sister who beat the shit out of her as a kid and broke her nose a bunch of times, which is why she says her nose looks like that of a clown. That's a messed up scene, man.
That is.
That's like some really dark stuff, because the actress has more of a prominent nose, and you see it and you're like, oh, and then they just point it out to you.
Right.
Talking about how the character was broken. Then she's like making fun of herself. And I'm like, man.
You gotta wonder if the casting sheet was like, we need somebody with a prominent proboscis, you know what I mean?
Or, yeah, I mean, basically, I like a unique look, you know what I mean? And it's like, but then she has to insult her own. To me, it was I like the fact that they went there in the film, but at the same time, it's like, damn, dude.
Right, this poor actress reading this scene.
Like, outside. Yeah, exactly.
It's the method,
then,
Rob. You gotta commit to it.
And then, you know, in the dream, we see her with the clown makeup on at one point, that's a creepy little dream sequence that she has.
That's one of the creepiest clowns I've seen. Like, it's very
like
haphazardly
sad
put
clown.
on. Yes, it's like Emmett Kelly sad clown mixed with Gacy. Honestly, it's really weird and unsettling.
Now,
which is kind of a
like
theme.
They fight each other. And, you know, at the end of it, it's pretty much Stella is the successful one out of it. And they take Cecile, they tie her up, and Gdula has been drinking the blood of these people.
Yep, that's what the marks are from. They hang them and they hang them up and kind of put this
make
suction
an incision
thing. Yeah, exactly.
And they do a suction tube to pull the blood from them. Usually not to kill them, but in this case, I think he pretty much fully drains her, because she's barely got anything left in her when she talks to Stella in her final moments.
Yeah, and the actress, I think her look worked really well for that, because she kind of looks like a girl from like a sleepy German village. She's got that strong jaw and you know, you could totally see this lady feeding some sheep. And so on, you know, and so, but yeah, like you said, when they're talking, she is at death's door there. Nothing really left in the tank.
Yeah, and then it's, you know, Gdula, as he leaves, drops like a letter opener on the ground, like a weapon, basically, for her.
Yeah,
and it's
almost like a video game. Like,
it really is.
How you were saying, like, it's convenient where the cell phone is and so on and so forth. I feel like if there was a game made of this, it's, you know, okay, you found a letter opener. Great, now I can attack something. You know what I mean?
But the funny part is it all ties together on why it's there. It's not all arbitrary.
Oh, yes.
You're like, man, this is, like, why would he just drop this thing for her?
Totally purposeful.
And then you're like, oh, yeah, because he's been leading her this entire time to become full of emotion. Once she has full emotion and can let go of anything that would hold her back, like any morals or boundaries, then, you know, he explains that this is where it gets weird. He's like, what was it? Was it the Soviets or something? We're talking because he was talking about like the Russians were trying to perfect blood, basically taking blood and then they would inject it into people and it would cause them to be younger or stay younger.
Live longer, really. Yeah.
Live longer, essentially.
And then the more emotion, I guess, the person is feeling, the better the blood works. Yeah.
It's like a purer, truer blood, like a stronger, more resilient blood.
They're aging your body wine. Yeah.
And he basically is like, I found a better way. And that's what his method was. His method was basically get you to the most heightened state of emotions to be that full
to taste
type
better
of
and work better for his purpose. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's all
keep people
entirely
immortal.
selfish. Like, I think that's a cool thing, too, is that they've taken this selfless act of being a teacher and training people, and it's all entirely selfish. It is also this guy can go like Elizabeth Bathory on people. And
exactly.
And then his student that we saw in the documentary, who's still alive as well, and she shows up looking like the witch from Troll 2, man, with like the white makeup and the sunken eyes.
She looks just, and it's like that ghoul thing. Like basically she awakens when someone needs to die, because that's what you see. She's in this chair until like she's activated, essentially.
Because
grabs her sword.
German male Tilda Swinton is kind of the main ninja / killer for most of the movie, as we find out. But when
no, not male Tilda Swinton, because it's not. Male Tilda Swinton was there, and we thought he was.
Oh, okay, because he had the mask and everything. Okay, gotcha.
He had, but it was was the one who was activated, who was the one killing everyone.
Oh,
so
I thought she only was killing the people at the end of the movie. Okay, well, I totally misunderstood.
I'm pretty sure that I thought she was doing it the whole time, and that just because of she was very, very resilient, and I feel like he was just there because you see him and he's mainly using injections and needles and stuff like that. So I see him as more of the
doctor of it. Yeah, and
the doctor.
She's almost a golem. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. And then she gets activated to.
So that makes perfect sense. Yeah, that went over my head on the
gloves
first
and all that too.
Well, I mean, he has the kind of the outfit too. You know,
that's true.
And he's got the mask.
To see him as the killer, it's kind of like
right.
It would just kind of be like, that's the killer.
You know, though, in my head, as soon as I saw him in that outfit and with the mask and everything, I totally pictured him like creeping through German Allison Pill's house and stabbing everybody and stabbing the boyfriend in the neck and everything. But it makes way more sense
because remember, she has the ability to influence and activate the method because of her eyes. Remember, she gives the crazy eye look multiple times, and when she gives the crazy eye look, that's when the girl, I'm pretty sure, stabbed herself in the neck.
Yeah, exactly. So no, you're absolutely spot on there. I mean, it had,
and I love that. I love that explanation. And when you finally see, our main character Stella, like she gets this needle and stabs the male Tilda Swinton in the neck multiple times. Multiple times, and then bends the needle out, and he makes this awful Wilhelm scream. By the way, the sound design at the end of this falls apart completely. Yes. Because it's Wilhelm scream after Wilhelm scream after Wilhelm scream.
And they don't even match up with the mouths of the characters. Like Gadulus does it at one point, and
and
his mouth is shut.
Loud one, yeah.
His mouth is shut at one point, and it's you know, it's so ridiculous. And the rest of the movie is so good. I don't know whether the sound guy got sick that day, like what happened. But they were just like, you know what, dude, we'll go on Wikipedia and we'll put this in
the soundtrack has an issue too.
Yeah,
because kind of in the same way that Reanimator theme is Psycho, the composer of this, which this is supposedly an original score, as I'm listening to it, I'm like, dude, you just reworked the Suspiria theme by a Goblin. You just reworked it. And then, as we're going through and I'm listening to the music at the end when they're giving the reveal, I'm like, dude, this is the Saw theme.
Yeah, they straight up stole the Saw theme. The it's a little mix of Requiem for a Dream, too, you know?
Yeah, Kronos Quartet a little in there too. So it was basically an amalgamation of a ton of different things. It seems like they put together music-wise to be like, hey, look what we're paying tribute to. And I'm like, yeah, to a point, but if you had done it a little better.
There's a difference between tribute and plagiarism, and I feel like they this was obviously a labor of love for these people to make this movie. And, I feel like their attentions were probably elsewhere, and the composer showed up and he's, I've got all this original music I made, and they're like, man, that sounds good, throw it in here. You know what I mean? Because they're all the shots that are so meticulously set, all the lighting that is so perfect and things. I know that's where a lot of the effort went in. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
And so I'm sure they listened to the soundtrack that the guy provided, and they were like, that sounds great. Yeah, let's do it. It's evocative of this and that. And it's like, well, it's a little more than evocative of it. It basically is that song.
Now, what I really liked about when we get towards the ending of this film, is they have this final confrontation. She stabs Gdula in the leg with this letter opener or whatever. He screams.
He said, she's ready!
She's ready!
Yeah.
And then he yells out, I think, to Lenka. And then she comes out, and they kind of have this confrontation where you see that she's been the one the entire time, and there's this kind of standoff where it's like they're going to attack each other, and they go at each other.
And that's
in a really
off
cool
screen,
way of how it looks.
yeah. It almost looks like a Scott Pilgrim face-off at first. You know what I mean? Like, but I love the look that Stella gives when because we've seen, as you said, the chick do the crazy eyes earlier and make people kill themselves and stuff. She gives Stella the look, and Stella is immediately just full of rage and ready to try and kill this woman. And
it's this cool moment, and then it just cuts to black, and then we see Stella on the stage celebrating and getting this great, ovation for her performance. And I'm like, oh shit, well, she made it. She's the actress. She did it.
Oh,
and then she looks out, and I'm like, oh no, man, that's Cecile in the audience. Mm-hmm. Oh man, that's your mom in the audience.
All these dead people.
Oh man,
yeah.
You didn't. Oh no!
And that
and then
camera shot is perfect, where it twists from that, and we see that she's upside down, like laughing, and that blood is just pouring all over her and hitting her in the chin and splashing around as she looks happier than she's looked in the whole rest of the film, because in her head she's up on that stage and she's done it and everything, but Gdula and Lenka are just going to town, just gutting her basically and getting all that blood out of her, because
they're bleeding her out because they finally got the blood that they wanted.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think she was the best one they've ever had, basically, as far as how passionately she felt the emotions, and how well the method worked on her, really. Yeah. And I think that's honestly like why he dropped the letter opener and so on and so forth. Is because I don't think his other students in the past have gotten that far, shall we say?
No, no one had. I think she was the only one who hit the final step.
Right. I think at some point before then, like we've seen the marks on people's backs and they've been slowly drained and stuff. I think at some point they kind of hit a wall. You know what I mean? As far as working with the method and not progressing like Stella did to that like anger and vengeance phase and stuff. I think they got every other emotion out of these people, and then when they couldn't push them past that, they were like, okay, let's kill them, let's drain them, whatever. But they saw something in Stella, and again, I think it was because she started so low with acting ability and with desire and so on and so forth. I think that she had a much bigger spectrum to cross and build through. You know what I mean? And
absolutely.
So I think they saw that in her and were willing to give her the chance. Because like you said, you think for a minute that, okay, she won, when she's fighting Lenka. And I think that they even considered the possibility that she might kill the both of them. But they were so invested in having this perfect blood finally that they were willing to take that risk.
I mean, they've had enough time to plan this out for decades. The perfect moment. So I mean, at the end of the day, like this film's awesome. Like
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, this is one that I highly recommend. It is nice to see a tribute to Giallo films be better than a lot of Giallo films.
Oh, it's better than most of them, I would say.
And that blows my mind too. It's a German Giallo better than the majority of most Giallo films.
Right. I'd put it right there with the tippy top of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And honestly, above a couple of those, just because I know part of Giallo is that it's not supposed to make a ton of sense, because that's part of keeping the audience guessing and on edge and stuff. But I loved that this did have a full story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that there was a reason for even anything that seemed nonsensical throughout the movie. The movie was interesting enough that you keep going and watching, and it all does make sense at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really. I mean, by the end of it, it does. So yeah, that's a solid recommend, and I think that pretty much covers it. For Masks.
Yeah, no, Masks was great, and it's available on Amazon Prime. And much like the next movie we'll be talking about, Braid. So if you want to put yourself, I do not recommend Braid as highly as I recommend Masks.
Now here's the thing. We're going to be talking about Braid. That'll be our next one. It's a movie that, I don't like it as much as Masks, but it definitely has its moments.
Oh yeah, I didn't hate it.
Definitely,
but it's
definitely worth a watch. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm, it's worth watching, but I wouldn't. This Masks, I would say, is a good movie. Braid, I would say, is worth watching, but I will not tell you that it's good.
Yeah, I will say, they did some interesting things with it.
That's one way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, it leaves a lot more questioning and guessing, but we won't go on that too much.
Yeah,
so
we're just mentioning it so you can watch it yourself if you want, and see if you agree with us when we're discussing it here next time.
Yeah, but yeah, so you can find us on ohthehorrorcast.com, anywhere you download your podcasts, at ohthehorrorcast, Facebook, Instagram, all of that fun stuff. But yeah, we'll be back very shortly with another episode of Oh the Horror. Until next time, I've been Rob Holmes.
And I am German Tilda Swinton. No, I'm Mike Haston. And I'm not great at a Wilhelm scream, so we're going to have to dub that in.
Look at me, Damien. It's all for you.
Come, it is time to keep your appointment with the Wicker Man.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the